Wow, Steve, so amazing to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to share this session with Symphony 7 and the members. I met you about 7, maybe almost 8 years ago now. Stephen was invited to deliver a talk by a client of mine who had dropped about 40 kilograms in 6 months under Stephen's guidance.
Wow.
And Steve, to say that you gave a mind-blowingly interesting talk which started with that story about your client in New Zealand who was about to die of a heart attack, and the heart specialist gave this person 6 or 7 weeks to live. Anyway, who knows, that might be part of what you're going to share today, but I was just blown away by the talk. And at the end of the talk, Stephen said, "Any questions?" And this was 2 hours later. I put my hand up and I said, "Yes, what would you do with gout?" And I'd been in and out of rheumatologists, doctors, specialists, etc., for about 12 years. And I don't know if any of you know someone who's had gout, but if you do, you'd know it is excruciatingly painful when you get a gout attack. It is unbearably painful. And for me, the attacks would last anywhere between 2 days and 6 months on one occasion. And Stephen just solved the question for me literally in 3 minutes. He told me what to do. And he was reluctant to accept a consultation fee when I followed up a month later to say, "Please give me your bank account details." Steve said that was just 3 minutes at the end of a session. It wasn't even a consultation, but I'm pleased to say it's now 7 years later, I have gout completely under control. Steve, I reckon I've referred maybe 70 people to you over the last 7 years, and the number of people that come back to me and just say, "This guy's a genius. There's nothing he doesn't know about food." It's just quite remarkable. And Steve, you're happy to challenge the status quo. You're happy to put your opinions forward, even when they sometimes don't agree with the medical model. I, for one, have been absolutely privileged to get to know you. I spend a couple of hours more every year in consultation with Steve. I have learned so much about food and its relationship with the body. And I know you've cured dozens and dozens of people that have been condemned to death by the medicos in terms of terminally ill cancers. And I know that you've helped a lot of people to wake up at 5 a.m. feeling brilliant, and all of that through their food. You've helped my daughter with her skin irritation. I could go on for an hour, but then I'll steal from your talk. I am immensely grateful for what I've learned from you, and I cannot recommend Steve and his consultation services any more highly to anyone who's on this session today. I'm so excited to hear from you today. Thanks for joining, Steve.
Oh, thank you, Ant, for those kind words. Yes, Ant is certainly someone that's unique in my experience, because he's the only person who has ever offered to pay for a consultation when I told him, "Oh, that's okay. It was just a short time." His sense of fairness, is until now is still left a lasting impression.
Steve, if you don't mind, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. If I can just ask everyone to mute themselves, just so that we don't have background noise. And then what Steve's going to do, he's going to talk at us incredibly amazing stuff. So I would suggest you get a pen and paper, because you will want to write stuff down. I'm recording this session, so I can definitely share it with you, and feel free to go over it and over it and over it. So the first hour will be Steve talking to us, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So if you want to just jot them down for yourself, but I would definitely suggest you get a pen and paper ready. Steve, over to you.
And I'm
Okay,
so
thank you.
sorry. Steve, I shortchanged you with the introduction because I didn't tell everyone. How old are you now? 75, 76?
I'll be 75 in a month.
75 in a month. You look 65. If you shave the beard off, you'd look about 35. And I remember you telling me that when you flew over to Sweden, it was right at the height of the uptake of COVID. And I said, "Steve, are you not afraid?" And you said, "No, I'm not afraid at all, because my immunity is sky high. And I know that if I get hit by COVID, it's going to be a fairly short case for me to get over." You haven't been sick for 50 years, and you got
That's right.
kids in their 20s who've never needed to go to the doctor. I don't know what more I can say about you.
Well, that's an interesting aspect you brought up, and a good way to start this session, because I spend half the year in Melbourne, usually the warm half, and unfortunately it looks like I won't be able to do it this time, but I'll get the taste of the Nordic Swedish winter again. Yeah, in April, I was actually planning to stay until May, as I normally do. I actually caught the last flight from Melbourne back to Europe. It was quite a dramatic time. It was a bit like Casablanca there, you know, Humphrey Bogart. And at the time, you know, they were telling everybody, especially old people, you know, stay at home. In the UK, saying if you're over 70 years old, don't leave your house for 3 months. So I went out to Melbourne Airport, stood in line, checked in my luggage, went to security, went to passport, went to the gate, sat around with 200 other people, got on an airplane. There was not one free seat. This was the last flight out of Melbourne. Not one free seat. And I was hoping, well, you know, maybe they'll space us out. But as Amp said, I never had any doubt that I would get through it because I know what makes us ill and I know what makes us healthy. So I just did that. And I was absolutely sure that I would get through it, even though I'm in what is called the endangered age group, which of course is silly because we have two ages. We have a biological age and we have a chronological age. So chronologically, just in a couple of weeks, I'll be 75. But I would say my biological age is probably about 55. So I'm going to tell you what I did to be so sure that I wouldn't get affected by the virus. And I'm sure one or two of you will be interested in hearing this because with all this lockdown stuff, we see that it reflects really our society as a whole. And that is that there's a fixation on the microbes and all we can do is avoid it. So we're going to, you know, stay at home and we're going to wear masks and the whole thing. And in reality, there are two aspects to this. There is the microbe, and then there's what is called the inner terrain. Now, unfortunately, we have a very one-sided view that was influenced by Louis Pasteur. If we could have had someone else influence so strongly, we'd probably have a wiser approach to this whole thing. But Pasteur is the one who did it. And another one called Claude Bernard was a contemporary of Pasteur. And he said, no, Pasteur's got it all wrong. He's totally fixated on the microbes. And what's really important is your inner terrain, because that will decide if the microbe finds an environment to thrive in. So Bernard and Antoine Béchamp were both friends, and they both had the same idea as a group against the interpretation by Pasteur. So what he did was he drank a glass of water with cholera bacteria to make his point. So how many of us would be so convinced we were right that we'd be willing to drink a glass of water with cholera bacteria? Well, both of them, Béchamp and Bernard, were both the forerunners of acid alkalinity balance. The idea that if your body is over acidic, you become vulnerable to microbes, and if you're alkaline, you'll be better protected. So he was alkaline in his body composition, and he was absolutely sure, just as I was sure getting on that plane with all these people, that I would not be affected by it. And he didn't get sick. And it is said, I don't know if this is really true, but it is said that on his deathbed, Pasteur said that they were right, you know, that he had got it wrong. Well, I think most, or every medical authority, chief medical officers, and all these people have got it wrong, because I haven't heard one word about how to take care of this. In fact, the Canadian government, I saw a thing on Facebook, the Canadians have put out an information. There is no food and there are no supplements that can help you. Just follow the government's guidelines for lockdown and masks, you know, and just we'll take care of it. Nothing could be further from the truth. And in reality, there are a lot of things we can do about it. I'm going to go through that for you. Just give you an idea. About 6 weeks ago, an interesting study was published. This is very exciting stuff with immunity because it's changing all the time. This COVID thing is a new experience for humanity. And so things are coming all the time, and it's really interesting to just stay, you know, well informed on what's happening. So they did a study of dead COVID patients, And they had two groups in their analysis. One group were those that had a vitamin D, like dog, vitamin D deficiency. And the other were those who were in the upper level of the normal range. So they have a normal range for vitamin D. Now, this is not a scientifically determined range. This is, they look at all the people that are tested, and that's the average. So you actually have, this is the average of your sick society today. So you should actually be in the upper level of normal, and even be above a bit of normal is better. So they looked at only those in the upper range, not in the middle, and then those who had a lack of vitamin D. They found that your risk of dying of COVID is 19 times greater if you have a vitamin D deficiency. Now, don't you think this should be interesting information to chief medical officers? I mean, I have no medical background. I am a food consultant. I know a lot about food, but everything I've learned about medicine, I have learned on my own studies or from friendly doctors who have a similar approach. I'd say about 5% of doctors are good, and we can forget 95% of the others, with the exception of emergency medicine. Of course, trauma medicine, you know, doctors, that's where they shine, but they're really, really very bad at anything that has to do with degenerative illness, such as gout, all of these things that just affect the body. So what I'm going to do now is give you a course in natural immunity. And as you heard from Ant, that I haven't seen a doctor in 50 years now. And by coincidence, 50 years ago, I changed my food. I wrote a book. And in this book, I pointed out that when I started, I was 25 years old, and I had a lump on my lower right arm. And being 25 years old and having no idea of these things, I thought maybe this is a tumor. So I went to the doctor. That was my last visit. The doctor said, this is a lipoma, which is a harmless gathering of fat, excess fat. It shows basically the liver is not doing well in its processing of fat. But I can cut it out here, in the office, just a little local anesthetic. And I said, well, if it's harmless, I think I'll keep it because I don't like to get cut. So off I went with my arm intact. And shortly thereafter, I attended a lecture about food and health. It made all sense to me. I decided to try it out. So I'll try this a week and just see what happens. Well, the difference I felt within 24 hours is so amazing that here I am 50 years later telling people about this. But I found in my experience in telling others about it that many people would rather debate this for a week than try it out for a week. It's always interesting to see, especially men. I find women to be more receptive. I always really appreciate any man who grasps this, because there's something in the male mentality that is, once it's challenging, it's like, the alpha male or something. There's this challenging thing that comes on, whereas women tend to grasp this more easily. Once I did a lecture in Bergen, Norway. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, second largest city in Norway. There were 90 people attended. There were 89 women and 1 man. So of course, they told me there was a soccer match that evening, so that's probably one reason. In any case, this evidence is pretty clear when you try it out. So it's just a matter of doing it. So you can go on my website, which I'll show you after, and you can also get the book, which is available in Melbourne. My partner has it there. We don't sell it on Amazon because there are so many books on healthy food that you just get lost in the crowd. The only people that buy this book are those who have contact to me, or it gets recommended by someone, and that's it. So but I'll give you that information. So I'm really excited about being able to do this, and I hope that you're looking forward to this as much as I am. This is just top level information. And if Daniel Andrews had any sense, he would be hooked into this too. But of course, he doesn't know about this, and I don't think he's interested, because you have to be some kind of medical officer to say anything that people will listen to. Unfortunately, medical treatment in the world, in the industrialized countries, is a 3rd most common cause of death. So, you really want to develop your own skills in taking care of yourself. So I think I'll begin with with my PowerPoint program. I have. Would you enable my screen? Okay, I'll try that again now. Yeah, there it goes.
All right, Steve.
Where am I? There I am.
Steve,
Yes.
just while you're bringing your slides up, I don't know if anyone else can hear a little bit of a scratching noise, and I'm wondering whether your microphone is rubbing on your neck.
Oh,
Can
maybe
anyone
it
else?
is. Yeah, I'll see if I can bring it up there. Does that better?
Yes, thanks, Anne.
Yes, that's better.
Ah, okay, great. Thank you for making that clear to me. Okay, now I'm up to number one. So here we are, the introduction. Eat right for a strong immune system. Take responsibility for your health. So either you take responsibility or the doctors do. So if you let the doctors take responsibility, then you have to hope that their judgment is clear and proper. So you're just putting your life in their hands. Go ahead, doc. You know, I'm putting my my fate in your hands. Well, rather than doing that, we're going to do something else. We're going to do it ourselves. So let's start with what the immune system does. So the immune system protects against virus, including the COVID. Now, the COVID virus is no more hardy than any other virus. It's just one that has to have some very nasty side effects. And so it protects us. So the question is your immune system up to snuff? Is it able to do the job it's supposed to do? Well, it needs nutrients. And where do those nutrients come from? They come from food and from supplements. I worked in a clinic in Germany for several years as a food consultant, and it was mainly a cancer clinic, but we had other people too. And one of the departments was psychosomatic medicine. In other words, they assume that some emotional experience has caused your health problems. It's a very one-sided way of looking at things because health problems have all kinds of causes. In any case, I have seen people who would have very serious mineral deficiencies, and they're being told this because of some conflict they had with their mother when they were young. You know, that's just silly, because if you've got a zinc and magnesium deficiency, then no amount of resolving your childhood conflicts will solve that problem. You know, your immune system needs zinc and magnesium. So that's just the very basis. And of course, your nervous system is a physical organ. So for the idea that this is a psychological problem is a very dualistic way of looking at things. It's not seeing holistic. It's sometimes referred to as reductionist. Reductionist means you're just focusing on one thing, like genetic. This is genetic. Like the breast cancer is genetic. That's called reductionist. So you're cutting out all other factors and just focusing on one thing. Well, I'm not going to focus only on food and supplements, but the reason I'm going to concentrate on that is because this is the one factor we have total control of ourselves. If it's a single mom with 2 kids and she's trying to work and take care of them, she doesn't really have total control over her stress level. If you say you have to reduce your stress level, how is she supposed to do that? Or she may have a home that's near a major motorway and there's a lot of air pollution. Well, you've got to get away from air pollution. Every second you're breathing in or breathing out air, good air quality is important, but you can't always just then move up to the Dandenongs because the air is better up there. So we're talking here about something you can take care of and you can heal yourself. I have seen people, as Ant mentioned, I've seen people who were written off as cancer victims. Like, you got 3 months to live and there's nothing to do. We're not even going to treat you because you're already a lost cause. Have these people bounce back because the body's self-healing ability is far beyond what most people would imagine, especially doctors. And of course, the doctor's speaking from his experience. He hasn't seen anyone recover because he's never talked to them about anything besides doing chemotherapy and radiation. So what we want to do, we want to have less Louis Pasteur and more Antoine Béchamp or Claude Bernard, because there needs to be less focus on the microbes and more focus on a strong defense. And that's what we're going to do here. So your choice is to be a passive and obedient or active and independent. So most people are willing to give their responsibility for their health over to doctors. So it's a bit like a child and the parent. So, you know, the doctor says, you've got to do this. It's like dad telling you, you've got to do this. It isn't a coach who's trying to help you. You're saying you have to do this. And if you say, well, I don't want to do that, then the reaction is more like a parent dealing with a child that has to be told what to do. The proper role of a doctor is actually to be an advisor, a coach. Like I call myself a food coach. I'm not a therapist. You know, I don't treat anyone. Here in Sweden, for example, only medical doctors are allowed to treat cancer patients. But I can talk to cancer patients because all I do is give them advice. If I was a massage therapist, I wouldn't be able to do that. That's considered a treatment. So the main thing is that everybody knows his or her body best. And that's why anything anybody tells you should always be tempered by the understanding that in the end, you're the one who decides. So I make an informed estimation of what I think works, and it does work quite often because I have a lot of experience. But in the end, if someone says, well, I tried that and I felt like I needed a bit more of this and that, I say, well, great, you know, do what your body tells you to do. So remember, being informed is your first step, and that's what you're doing right now. By taking part in this program, you're informing yourself. Now, the important thing to remember is that medicine is corrupt. It's very corrupt. I read an interesting editorial comment once in The Age, which I found to be quite unique. I've never seen anything like that since. It was at the time they began the mass vaccinations against the cervical cancer with young girls, young schoolgirls. And and one day in Melbourne, they had 4 girls end up in the emergency room from reactions to it. And one of the journalists at The Age wrote that we have to remember that doctors are actually businessmen. They're small businessmen, and they are interested in making their profit. They have to pay the rent. They have to pay their staff. And this is not just a matter of what is good. It's a matter of what gives profit. So George Bernard Shaw, he's one of my favorites for quotes. One of his best quotes, I thought, was when he said, "Youth is such a wonderful time. It's too bad that we waste it because we're young." Well, he also said that a doctor's profit potential for a new treatment will decide whether or not this treatment is approved. So you can be sure that what I'm telling you today is not going to be approved by doctors. So just have that clear, because I have had people who will go to a doctor and say, now this man said that with food you could do this and that, and the doctor say, forget that, this man doesn't know what he's talking about, he's a charlatan. You know, there's absolutely no evidence to show that that does it. Well, there is a lot of evidence, but he hasn't seen it. I mean, doctors go to school, basically. They go to school like someone who would take a plumber's training or anything else. They learned a certain skill, and that's what they do. They look at symptoms, and they prescribe pharmaceutical drugs for that. So the pharmaceutical industry dominates the medical system, and the US FDA has been captured, as it's called. Captured means that they run it. The head of the FDA is a former CEO of a pharmaceutical company. So isn't that's like what they call making the the fox taking care of the chicken coop. So medicine is very political, and what we're seeing right now, you've probably read about the hydroxychloroquine is I've actually got an extra IN in there. Is something that Donald Trump came out and recommended. It's for 65 years been a medicine for dealing with malaria. So it's an accepted medical treatment. And doctors who now recommend this are actually being threatened with having their medical license taken away. And I've noticed with Donald Trump, now there are a lot of things you can say bad about Donald Trump. I mean, he just basically invites you to to say critical things about him. But not everything Donald Trump does is wrong. And I've noticed there's almost like a Pavlov's dog salivation kind of response, that when he says something, you immediately just have everybody attacking him. But he actually got this one right. that hydrochloroquine is something that will help to, can save your life if you have COVID. And I'm going to come back to that later. But when it's considered medical heresy, then you get threatened. About a month ago, there was a group of about 10 doctors came forward before the microphone and all said that they had seen this work and they would like to have it made available. Well, it's still being fought because there is no profit in this. Something that's 65 years old has no patent. The pharmaceutical industry is now working on other things, but they haven't got them quite fixed yet, that they can sell them, and there will be a lot of profit in that, billions, because there's a patent on that. By the way, you may have seen the latest news. It's in the news today that the testing for this new COVID vaccine has to be put on hold now because one of the test persons got a very dangerous inflammation in the nervous system from it. Another thing that's interesting is that 3 out of 4 doctors do take supplements, even though they will tell you that supplements don't help because they are basically required to say that. So what you need is adaptability and self-discipline. The immune system keeps the body in balance with the environment around it, but it does that because it is adaptable, and it's adaptable because it's healthy. You've got the nutrients that it needs to be adaptable. So for self-healing, it takes self-discipline to do it. Now, when Ant tells you the story of his recovery from gout, that's because he had that self-discipline aspect of his personality. In fact, I have found that people who are successful in dealing with their health problems through self-healing, they tend to be the same people who are successful in their careers, their business careers, because they have the self-discipline it takes to be successful. Now, holistic thinking is needed, not this one-sided reductionist stuff. So, what is more interesting than knowledge about how to stay healthy in a pandemic? You know, it's, in Melbourne, we have this very extreme lockdown. It's making news here in Sweden and elsewhere. Everybody's talking about this because nowhere in the world are the conditions as extreme as they are there in Victoria. And the question is this right? Well, you can stay healthy whatever the authorities do, because obviously lockdowns are not really the answer here. So that means you make health a priority. I have been lucky that health has always been my priority. If I discover something new and I know it's good for me, I do that. Most of the things I know, I learned by my own experimentation and research, because when I started in 1970, that winter, northern winter of 70, 71, I had absolutely nobody to go on. I had to just do it myself. In those days, I would have to explain to people why I didn't eat sugar. People had never heard of this before. I would hear people say, oh, but the brain needs sugar. You think, how can people be so dumb? So now, why do people get afraid? Why was I not afraid when I flew from Melbourne back to Europe? It's because people don't understand the whole context. Now, why do some people get sicker than others? With COVID, we have a good example. Some people have hardly any symptoms or none at all. Other people die. And what is the explanation? Well, some people have a physical condition that can deal with stress like an illness, and others can't. But one thing is clear. We have to solve the crisis ourselves. And this is not only for COVID. COVID is just something that's keeping us on our toes at the moment. It's about cancer. If you look at the way cancer is increasing right now, your chance of getting cancer in your life, if you are male, is 47%. In other words, almost 1 out of 2 men will get cancer. 1 out of 2 men in my age already has prostate cancer. Men over 70, prostate cancer is very common. With women, it's a bit better. About 35% of women will get cancer in their lives. So 1 out of 3 women, 1 out of 2 men. All of this is immune system stuff. So the outer is the skin, stomach acid, mucous membranes. These are a barrier against microbes and fungus and things that can harm us. And this outer barrier can only function well if there are nutrients. So remember, it comes down to getting the right food and maybe some supplements. So complex carbs are a good way to start. Now, we live in the low carb age. I've had a lot of people talking about the low carbs, and they're very popular. I teach at an Institute for Natural Medicine here in Stockholm, and I was teaching this course, and a young woman about 25 years old in the first row puts her hand up and says, "Now, I don't think you should eat grains and starchy vegetables because it's really not good to have so many carbs." And I said, "Well, I've been doing that for 50 years and it certainly worked out well for me." And that was the end of the conversation. We didn't have to go into the tech. Well, what happens to insulin if you eat carbohydrates, because there are so many aspects to health. We can't possibly understand them all. I think we would probably need a combined power of several brains to be able to just at once grasp all of this. So I would say we look at tradition. Traditionally, people have eaten whole grains. Here in Northern Europe, people have had rye bread and barley and oats, a lot of oats, like in Scotland also. The oats grow well in a cold climate. This is the food that our ancestors have eaten. So also healthful oils like coconut oil, olive and sesame oil. These have a long tradition. Canola oil has no tradition. Canola oil is toxic, and you're wise not to take it. What's a canola? We know what a coconut is and what an olive is. What's a canola? A canola, well, it's just an artificial creation because it's an artificial oil, and it's a short word for Canada oil. So they started growing all this rapeseed in Canada, and they modified it. They hybridized it and genetically modified it, and so they wanted to come up with a new name because rapeseed is a PR disaster, basically. So they came up with the idea of let's call it Canada oil. So they call it canola, and it's an artificial creation. Don't touch it. The best protein sources are legumes. That means pulses. So we're talking about lentils, chickpeas, beans, black beans, white beans, and also the omega-3 fish, such as wild salmon and mackerel. Now, in the Southern Hemisphere, there are no wild salmon other than if you go to a supermarket and buy Alaska canned or tinned salmon. Mackerel is another one. But if you take cod liver oil, there's omega-3 in that, and that is available in Melbourne. My favorite is called Nordic Naturals. It's got a nice, pleasant lemon flavor. It has no fishy taste. If you do like the fish taste, Melrose has got a good one too. But the omega-3 is especially important if someone gets COVID and it goes into an acute phase, because the common cause of death in COVID is what's called the cytokine storm. A cytokine storm basically just overwhelms the body with inflammation and kills it. So omega-3 is the best anti-inflammatory there is. It's even better than cortisone steroids that are produced by the pharmaceutical industry. So now, one thing to remember about our immune power is that 80% of your immune power comes from the gut. So what does that mean? That means that if you've got the right microbiome, now that's a word that's come on in the last 10 years or so. What we're talking about is the gut bacteria. All these bacteria, if you think about how much bacteria you have in your gut, it's anywhere from 1.5 to 2 kilos of bacteria in your gut. It's these bacteria that make it possible for your body to absorb the nutrients. They don't just, go through the wall. They have to be broken down, and that's what the microbiome does. How do you get that? Well, you eat fermented vegetables. And in the last 10 years, there's been a revolution in Australia with the availability of fermented vegetables. Until about 10 years ago, I had to make them all myself because there was one deli it was up around East St. Kilda somewhere that had some, but that's a long way to go for me. And I just made them myself. And then also miso, which is a soy paste, is fermented. And then something called umeboshi, which is ume is a fruit, and boshi means it's been fermented. It's a Japanese fruit that gets fermented and has very strong healing properties for the gut. Also coconut yogurt, but not cow milk yogurt, sheep milk yogurt, goat milk yogurt, no kind of milk from an animal. Coconut yogurt. Oh, we'll get back to that. So there's a connection between the gut and the brain. That's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the highway, information highway between the gut and the brain. And interestingly, 90% of the information is going from the gut to the brain rather than the other way around. Science keeps making new discoveries all the time. And what they discover is that what we thought before was not right. So they've discovered that actually, instead of the brain commanding the gut is sending a lot of information that will affect how the brain works. Once I was at the Austrian health fair in Vienna, where they had, people showing all kinds of different health ways they do and products they sell. And I was invited several times to speak. So I was in a podium discussion, and I was the only member of this podium panel without being a medical doctor or a professor. I was there as the alternative guy. So we started out introducing, and I was first in line there. So I said, well, I work with food. I work with the energies of food. Like some foods will warm the body, others will cool the body. Some things will create relaxation in the body. Other things will create more a tonifying effect. And we're working for this biochemical balance. And so the next was a professor of medicine from the University of Vienna. And he said, well, I don't work with energies like that. I am a scientist. I deal with facts. So it was, a little bit condescending there, as could easily happen with a professor of medicine. And someone put his hand up, and he said, Professor, he said, I'm a scientist. He said, isn't it true that which we accept as scientific fact now, we discard next year as nonsense? And the professor said, yes, that's right. And so this shows you, like, building on facts really doesn't work, because they keep revising the facts. Or as I say, they keep moving the goalposts. And we need to have more than just scientific fact. But one thing is for sure, 80% of the immune power comes from the gut. So let's make the gut strong. Let's eat the foods that make the gut strong. Let's not eat food that destroys the bacteria, like sugar. If you eat sugar, you create a very harmful environment for beneficial bacteria. If you drink tap water that's got chlorine, the chlorine is there to kill bacteria. Well, that chlorine in your gut will kill bacteria, and not just the bad ones. So a good water filter is one of the prerequisites for having a good, healthful lifestyle. I used to like to go up to the Dandenongs, and there are some springs there, if you don't mind waiting a while. But now with the lockdown, of course, that's out. But if you do have a good water filter, and this water filter should take fluoride, because fluoride will weaken your immune system. Fluoride is one of the great criminal acts against public health, we could say. And I remember when Anna Bligh became the Premier of Queensland, the first thing she did when she took over for Peter Beattie was that she fluoridated Queensland's water. Queensland was the only state left that didn't have it. So I felt, I'm a very calm, peaceful person, but I felt the urge to kill when when she did that. So in any case, we want to think of the water quality too, because it affects the way our gut bacteria will thrive. So the thyroid plays a key role in the immune system. And one of the problems with fluoridated water is it drives iodine out of your thyroid. And that means you'll have a weak thyroid, because thyroid hormones are made from iodine. So we could say fluoride is the halogen bully there. It just throws the iodine out. So if you drink fluoridated water, you can never have full immunity. Now, also selenium is also a key issue in immunity, and selenium is often a weak point, because Australian soil is selenium poor. Now, seaweed, on the other hand, is rich in iodine, selenium, and also magnesium and calcium. So let's eat seaweed. You can buy them in dried form in the organic food shops. And you'll find even some Australian seaweeds. There's some kombu from Tassie, for example. Then other ones are wakame, arame. The first three listed there, kombu, wakame, and arame, are called brown seaweeds, and they contain a substance called sodium alginate, which actually binds to heavy metals, chemical toxins, and takes them out of the body because your gut does not absorb sodium alginate. So it works like a vacuum cleaner. And you get, on the one hand, a removal of toxins. On the other hand, you get an enrichment with iodine, selenium, etc. And I'm sure that one of the major explanations for why I have done so well for so many years is that I eat seaweed every day and I don't have a mineral deficiency like most people. When I worked in the clinic in Germany, we worked with a special German blood test. It's called the spectrometric whole blood test, which looks at the whole blood. If you go to a doctor in any other place, well, now the US has actually introduced it too, but generally the medical doctor will work with what's called a serum analysis. So all of the blood cells are removed. They look only at the liquid part of the blood. This gives you a very superficial look at the blood. It's like looking at the tip of the iceberg. So Dr. Bayer in Germany came up with this spectrometric test. I've seen hundreds of them. I have never seen a cancer patient who has a normal spectrometric blood test. Most of the cancer patients have a normal serum test because it doesn't show you much. In any case, having looked at these tests, I have seen that almost all people, I would say somewhere between 95, 97%, have a magnesium deficiency. Now, how could you get a magnesium deficiency? Well, several reasons. If you have high insulin, because you like to eat sugar, you take alcohol, these are things that drive up insulin, and when insulin goes up, magnesium goes out in the urine. Another way is to exaggerate with calcium. Calcium and magnesium are antagonists. So if you desperately hang on to the outdated belief that you need dairy food for the calcium, so you're going to take plenty of that and maybe even calcium supplements, like, it's never too late for Caltrate. Well, when you do this overemphasis of calcium, you actually create a magnesium deficiency, and magnesium deficiency is a disaster for immune strength. Also, when your thyroid then becomes low, what you have is in the formation of antibodies, and the killer cells is also low because your thyroid guides this whole process. So you have weak immunity, in other words. So chemical toxins weaken the thyroid, so eat organic as much as you can. No one can eat totally organic, but if we eat mostly organic, our bodies can deal with it. The next subject is insulin resistance. That means you got so much high insulin. In other words, you're taking, let's say, fiberless carbohydrate. Now, there's two kinds of fiberless carbohydrate. One is sugar, white flour, white pasta. The other is potatoes. Potatoes are a natural product, but they have no fiber. So the insulin reaction to potatoes is the same as sugar. So until the low carb people came along, I didn't have many friends in the anti-potato camp. But today, with all the interest in low carb, there's actually other people out there saying don't eat potatoes. So we see there are all kinds of problems that happen from insulin resistance. You get raised blood pressure. There's something called metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is overweight, obesity, and it ends in diabetes type 2. If you're aware of what's going on in public health in the world, you'll want to look at diabetes because this is the future. It is increasing so fast that the public health authorities around the world are very concerned about this. And why does it happen? Diabetes type 2 is nothing more than advanced insulin resistance. Anybody can stop it. I've seen people cure their diabetes in 2 weeks because they don't eat anything that's going to cause an insulin spike. But doctors will tell you this is something you have to live with for the rest of your life because that's what they learned in med school. And dumb people will believe them and just take insulin, which means you'll probably live anywhere from 10 to 12 years less if you spend the major part of your life as a diabetic, your adult life. So we want to have a strong immune response, and that means you want to have a digestive system that's in order. But if obesity is there, this means that you have a higher risk of COVID. As you've probably read in all the news going around, the deaths of COVID have been people with pre-existing conditions, as they call it. In other words, they're sick people. And that is especially overweight, diabetes, high blood pressure, and taking multiple medications. Fructose lowers vitamin D. Now, I mentioned earlier how important that is. So watch out for fructose. Now, it's not so much a matter of eating fruit, because it sounds like it's from fructose, but fruit contains a combination of fructose and glucose. The really nasty fructose is called high fructose corn syrup, and it's added to refined food products because it's cheaper than sugar. So when you're trying to calculate profit as a producer, you always gain by doing that. Fructose takes the same pathway as alcohol. So the burden you do on your liver with fructose is very similar to alcohol. And it was interesting with Ant's case with the gout, because gout is mainly an overburdening of the liver. So what he did to solve his problem was simply he took away the burden, and his liver was able to work the way it's supposed to. And it's not a treatment. He didn't do a treatment. What he did was he let his body heal itself, because he gave the body what it needs to do that. So avoid sugar. If you do nothing else after this presentation, don't eat sugar. But you have to read labels, because sugar is everywhere. You'll find it in products you wouldn't dream about. Why is it there? It doesn't taste sweet. Well, they have found that people buy products more when it's got sugar, so that's why they do it. It causes oxidative stress. Another word for oxidative stress is aging. You age faster when you eat it. I'm sure most of you are not in a hurry to age. The old age comes on fast enough as it is. And of course, the formation of free radicals. Everybody knows about that. Sugar triggers glycation. Now, glycation means that the sugar molecules combine with the protein molecules in your muscles, as well as blood vessels and elsewhere, but especially the muscles, and it weakens them. So at my age now, in your 70s, people have anywhere from a third to half of their muscle mass is glycated, and that means it no longer has its original strength. Now, I have very little glycation, so my age doesn't matter. I do exactly what I've always done. I can lift, 25 kilos anytime I need to, like, carrying heavy weights. But body regeneration is slowed down by glycation. The German language is interesting, because German uses very basic words so that you have the definition in the word. So English likes Latin and Greek words, like this is a Greek word here. So we have to learn what it means. So what does glycation mean? Well, I explained it to you. In German, the word for glycation is called sugaring. So you would say that the muscles get sugared by sugar. So you say, what does that mean, sugaring? Well, we already know, because we just told you it's sugaring. That's where aging comes from. So sugar also blocks vitamin C absorption. Now, if you've been following COVID as much as I have, you know that the Chinese have been able to save people who are dying by giving them IV vitamin C infusions. Vitamin C is such an anti-oxidative stress substance that it can actually save people's lives. Doctors in the West are not enthusiastic about this, because they never learned about it in med school. And of course, there's no profit with vitamin C. You can walk into even a supermarket and get vitamin C for very little money. So sugar has a structure that's very similar to vitamin C. So when you eat sugar, it blocks this pathway, and not as much vitamin C gets through. And also, cells prefer glucose. They're hungry for glucose, so they will not take up vitamin C as much. So again, we have another reason: don't eat sugar. I came back from Vanuatu in March, coming back to Melbourne, and during the time I was in Vanuatu, the hoarding took place. It came out, that food may be gone. So when I walked into Woolies the first time after I got back from Vanuatu, I got to see these empty shelves there, and it was interesting that all the sugar was gone. I was thinking, but actually the food I like to eat was still there. So it was interesting to see that all the bad stuff was immediately taken, but all the sugar was gone from the shelves. And I thought, oh, these poor people, if you're going to hoard, that's what you hoard. So sugar metabolizes, the sugar metabolism, I should say, depletes vitamin B and minerals. Now, vitamin B is critical for immune response and also minerals, as we know. Sugar makes the body more acidic. Well, we know about Claude Bernard and Antoine Béchamp that the acid will make you more vulnerable. So again, fructose is the most harmful sugar, so don't take agave. You'll find agave in many health food products, so don't take those. I always get disappointed if you send like some kind of natural mayonnaise without sugar. Oh, that'd be nice to have that look, but they've used agave, so I don't buy it. So HFCS is high fructose corn syrup, and that's a no-no. Now comes something that's really difficult. That's caffeine. Caffeine blocks the absorption of magnesium, calcium, and zinc. These are the things we need, the minerals we need for the immune response. However, I have found that most people are so addicted to caffeine that they would rather risk immune weakness. They would rather risk osteoporosis. You need magnesium, calcium for your bones. But if you drink coffee, and 100 milligrams is enough, that's 1 cup of coffee. Well, I was at the Gold Coast last year, and it was really interesting. A woman came to see me for a personal session, and I saw she had my book. And so there were little bits of paper stuck in there, like she was studying for the exams, to get her VCE or something. And so the first question she asked was, is coffee really that bad? And I said, there's a whole chapter in the book telling you about the horrors of caffeine. Yeah, you've read the book. Obviously, you've got all these little markers to, And she said, that's the one chapter I didn't read. In other words, I don't even want to be confronted with it. This is, I don't want to hear this. If I don't hear it, then I have to think about it. But it's unfortunately true. Caffeine is one of the real burdens on immune system. It burdens the detox function of the liver. 80% of the population is dependent on caffeine, and it, of course, weakens adrenal function. So if you can even imagine this, don't take caffeine. And that means not decaf, because decaf is not free of caffeine. It has less caffeine. And unless it's organic, it has been made reduced caffeine by the use of toxic solvents. So here are examples, and even chocolate. Chocolate is also a caffeine source. So don't believe the polyphenol story about how good chocolate is for you. It's not right. Now, avoid milk and dairy food. This is really important too. Dairy food has too much calcium. I already talked about it. Calcium and iron are the two most burdening minerals we have. Calcium causes calcification. Iron causes oxidation. So you would only take those as supplements if you have confirmation that you're very low in those. And most people aren't. People are low in magnesium. Also, milk is high in phosphorus, which lowers the ability of calcium to even be absorbed. So the recommendation to drink milk for calcium is an industry profit-based recommendation. It is not based on science or any kind of medical information. So now think of this. If you have high blood pressure, the most common blood pressure medication is called a calcium channel blocker. It blocks calcium so that your blood pressure goes down. But how about this as a novel idea? Instead of taking all these high calcium foods, we avoid the calcium, that we don't need calcium channel blockers. All medications have side effects. Now, I confronted a medical doctor with this, and his response was very interesting. He said, well, people, they enjoy food. It's part of the pleasure of life. And if they want to do it, let them do it. We can work it out with the medications. So here again is like, give all the responsibility to me. We don't want people taking their own responsibility. See, the correct way would be say, now, as a medical doctor, I'm going to tell you this, that if you stop taking all these high calcium foods like milk, your blood pressure will go down. But if you don't want to do that, I can give you some medication. So you make the decision. Now, milk protein is especially bad. Casein, it makes the lymph fluid sluggish. Now, this is a big negative for the immune system when the lymph fluid gets sluggish. So there's two ways the lymph fluid will get sluggish. One is casein. Now, I don't have time here to go into the details of why this happens, but it's a very interesting story if I had more time. And the other is acidity. Over-acidity will also make the lymph fluid sluggish. So remember this, that dairy food raises the risk of autoimmune illness and cancer. So aside from all the other things we have to think about, autoimmune illness is going up very fast. Let's see, dairy food raises the risk of, I said that now, the lactose-free, that's what I want to say. Lactose-free milk is absurd. When you think of, okay, we got this stuff that's actually nature has meant for calves, and people don't do well with it because it's actually not meant for humans, it's meant for calves. But if we take the lactose out, then we can handle it. You know, say, well, why are we manipulating this stuff? It's obviously not meant for humans, just don't take it. I haven't taken milk for decades, and I am certainly living proof that you don't need it for your bones. I'd be just a pile of something on the floor by now after all these years of not doing something for my bones. So don't forget about the medication, the pharma medication. Medications lower magnesium and zinc. The worst medications for this are blood pressure medications, statins, which lower cholesterol, cortisone, and female hormone replacement. Now, the elderly obviously take more medications than young people do, and we know today that older people have roughly about a third less zinc in their bodies, and zinc is crucial for stopping the virus, as I'm going to show you here very shortly. So be sure to get enough minerals and vitamins. And many nutrients can actually replace meds. Now, I don't have time to go into all the details of how the food looks, but you can go into my website let's see, I'm going to go new share here. I'm going to show you this one. Here we are. So here is
Dave, are you okay?
We're frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's Steve. We'll just give him 1 minute to come back online. Hopefully he leaves and comes back. If you know what, we might take a minute while we're waiting for Steve to come back. If you want to put your questions into the chat box, please feel free. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Steve to come back, I might share my story with you about my engagement with Steve, and my husband is sitting next to me. His engagement with Steve as well. I don't know if he wants me to share his, but I'll share mine. So we've been doing so Ant introduced me to Steve. He kept telling me about Steve, and I kept ignoring him. And then at the beginning of this COVID lockdown, I kind of felt like, and I know this is going to sound a little bit weird, but I kind of felt like we wasted the first lockdown in March. Like, it came and went. I felt like I had, I worked my guts out. There was no doubt about it. But I had nothing from a health perspective to show for it. There was just nothing. So I felt like we just, came, went. Then we went back into the half real world, and I just didn't have anything to show. So when they announced that we were having another lockdown, I said to Michael, that's it. We are going to spend this one focusing on health, and health is going to be our #1 priority. So that was the focus of where we went to with this lockdown. So we met with Steve just as the lockdown was starting. And I said, that's it. We're doing this hardcore, because what's the point of doing it halfway? And we know that halfway doesn't work. Like, you need to either be in or you're out, they say you can't be half pregnant. It's one of those situations. So we decided that we were going to go in. So my husband has a pain condition. We have tried everything, every treatment, magical treatments, jump on the spot 3 times, spin around, and you'll be healed, everything. Traditional, non-traditional, we've tried it all. Within 24 hours of going off a whole bunch of this stuff, I won't tell you what he was eating because you might laugh, but it did involve possibly about 10 bananas a day, which are possibly, he's sitting next to me, which possibly was the worst thing you could be eating. But anyway, 24 hours later, us as people living with him were able to see a noticeable difference in how he was. So this has been going on for 5 years, this condition. And in 24 hours of going off some of these things, we were able to see a difference. So I just went, that's it. We just went hardcore into it. I hope Steve comes back because I'm not that good. So we went hardcore into it. So we've been doing this for 7 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks now, something like that. And people ask how, is this ridiculously hard? But I don't know. When you're committed and you've decided that you're doing it, then you just do it. And that's what we really went into this with. We went into this of, let's just do it. It's worth a try. We've tried other things that hasn't worked. Let's just give it a go. So my husband and I and our 12-year-old son have been doing this. We cook a lot. I cook a lot. I've been very, very creative. So we're completely vegetarian, apart from twice a week we eat white fish. But we're an extreme kind of health case, so we're going really, really hard at it. No coffee, no anything caffeine in it. We take the supplements, all the supplements that Steve has recommended, and it's made a humongous difference. Humongous, a very technical term to describe it, but really, really huge. Oh, Steve, you're back.
Yeah, well, I don't know what happened when
sharing a bit about how you've changed my life. So
okay, that's great. You filled it up. When I changed the picture, suddenly everything went black, and it said the computer was shutting down. I couldn't believe it. But
I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to.
Jenny, just before Stephen takes over again, the difference in you, like your physical appearance, is completely noticeable. Even after 2 weeks, like I saw a photo of you before and a photo 2 weeks later. And the difference is just massive. And to think that you did that using food, and I know you've been exercising a lot, but I don't know if the exercise has made a difference to your complexion. It's just unbelievable. It's quite unbelievable.
Well, it's really interesting because Steve, when we had that first consultation, you said straight away, oh, you've all got acidosis. Can you just describe that? Because I'm sure lots of other people are impacted by this as well.
Yeah, I actually teach 2 things. One is food and health, and the other is facial and body diagnosis. So I look at people and can judge their inner condition. This is a mixture of 2 things. One is the traditional Chinese TCM diagnosis, and the other is the German naturopathic diagnosis. I've worked a lot in Germany. As you'll discover if you read my book, I have a lot of comments about German sources of information. And so you can actually look at someone and see acidosis, which is, what it is having an excess of acid in your body rather than balancing acid and alkalinity. And your body has to pack it away somewhere because that acidity would destroy your kidneys, among other things. So your body packs it away. And the best place to pack it away is in the shoulder area and the back especially this small of the back area down to your kidneys, because the back is a very passive area that doesn't get used much. So it tends to pack it up here. So when you look at people, you can see a certain full packed condition here to judge that. Now, if I'm close to the person, it's very easy because I just give a little pinch there in the connective tissue here, and you can very quickly see that the closer you can get your finger, like your thumb and index finger together, the less acidosis, because you just have basically the skin and the connective tissue under that. But as the connective tissue gathers acid, it becomes thicker and thicker. So in the book, I mentioned how you can reach around behind you and feel, like do a chicken wing kind of thing, and feel the skin. If it's easy to pull the skin up from the connective tissue, or if it feels like an upholstered car seat, the tighter it is, the more acid. So the German system gives 4 levels of acidosis, like mild to extreme. And mild acidosis you can't see just looking at someone, but stage 3 and 4, the advanced and extreme, you can see that just looking at people. And I can get on people's nerves sometimes just walking down the street, commenting on their acid condition. The person going with me tells me I've obviously got some kind of damage from my profession, you know. I can't turn it off, but actually I enjoy this. Like, I enjoy what I do, so it's like fun, you know, and it's the best profession of all. But in any case, one way of checking it out is if you look at your hand, you can actually pull this skin up very easily. See, that's easy. That would be, there's no acidosis at all. So if you feel on your back and it's similar to this, you'll find that. But most people are not like that, and the thicker it is, the worse. And so you can actually massage the back and get rid of that, or someone can massage you and get rid of that. If it's stage 4, which is an extreme acidosis, you can't massage it. It's just like trying to massage the armrest of a sofa. So you have to use cups. So you do what's called cupping, which you put these cups on the back, and it creates a vacuum. And the vacuum just sucks up you can see the skin go up, and it breaks up all that acid, which is in a crystalline form. So when you take off the cup, you'll actually see black and blue marks. It looks like, you know, you've been involved in a fight somewhere, because you've got all these black and blue marks all over your back, but because the blood vessels will break when it's done. But it's the lesser of 2 evils. So that's basically what acidosis is. One of the many problems with today's people. Now, I thought I would try to, okay, now can you enable my screen sharing? I'm going to give one more try now here and hope that it goes well this time.
Steve, can we ask you to raise the microphone a little bit again?
Sure. You pointed that out, because I haven't noticed that myself.
Steve, can I just quickly interrupt you for a couple of quick things?
Sure.
There are a couple of questions about soy. Can you just talk about soy quickly?
Yeah, we'll take those now. That's fine. We've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
So what should we say about soy? Well, the soybean itself contains a lot of phytoestrogens. So phyto means they're from plants, and estrogens are female hormones. So the point of the phytoestrogens is to punish the enemy. The enemy is the person or the animal trying to eat the soy plant, to punish them for having the audacity to take that bean. The bean is the future of the plant, so it's packed with anti-nutrients. And the idea is that it will upset the mineral balance of the enemy. So if this is a female eating it, it will overload the female hormones. And if it's the male, it will neutralize his male hormones. So either way, it's a great way to protect yourself, because it means that you're weakening your enemy. So that's basically what happens. And if you eat lots of soy, you will gather lots of phytoestrogens in your body. Now, I am a great admirer of the female form, but I wouldn't want to have one myself. And so, you know, the only soy I eat are as condiments or smaller amounts. Let's say like miso. Miso is made with soy. It doesn't have to be made with soy, but it often is. There are actually now Australian misos that are very good. And you use that as a seasoning for soups and stews. Gives a nice bouillon kind of flavor. or tamari soy sauce. You know, it's also in the fermentation, most of the anti-nutrients in soy are removed. So I mentioned this. I've got a chapter called "To Be or Not to Be Vegetarian," and I go into the soy issue because vegetarians are more likely to eat lots of soy products. They take out, you know, the animal protein, and so it becomes plant protein. Well, there's nothing wrong with being vegetarian if you know your way around it. But soy is not the right choice of pulses. It's better to choose lentils and chickpeas and others. One of my favorite foods in Australia is chickpea tempeh. Now, tempeh is like a piece of cheese. You get it in the organic food shops. It comes from Indonesia originally, and it's made with soybeans, but it's been fermented. But even fermented soy, I don't eat lots of. So my favorite tempeh, what you do is slice it and then fry it, and you have a quick, easy meal. It's a bit like bacon. You have these strips that get fried. Gwen tempeh from Byron Bay is my favorite because you have the chickpeas instead of the soybeans. And tempeh is a very quick, easy meal to make.
You can buy that at Woolies.
Yeah. But what you don't do is drink soy milk and you know, eat soy ice cream and all of this kind of stuff because that will overload things. And I actually know a study that was done in Hawaii because there are a lot of Asians that have settled in Hawaii, and there's tofu. And so they looked at the Asians who had continued eating tofu and soy products and those that didn't, and they found that there's a certain shrinkage of the brain that happens with large amounts of soy. Now, that doesn't mean we have to be afraid of all soy. I eat soy daily, especially as miso, but I wouldn't want to make soy milk, you know, my substitute milk for cow milk. If you like white liquids, coconut milk would be a better choice. So that's what I could say about soy. There's more I could say about it, but that'll be for now.
Steve, can I ask you, so there's a couple of questions about getting off coffee.
Yeah.
What would you suggest for people who are real addicts? What is there? I just went cold turkey. I just went, okay, I'm doing it, and I just stopped. I don't know, I just did.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you put your mind to it, you just do it. But what would you suggest? How can people go down that path?
Well, it's a very important question because this is one of the stumbling blocks. And here in Scandinavia, the Scandinavians are the world champions in coffee drinking. When I tell Swedes to stop drinking coffee, they look at me like I've lost my mind. In fact, recently one said, well, how do you wake up in the morning then? I can't imagine. So how do you get off of it? Well, I'll tell you what we did in the clinic in Germany. Every Tuesday we had new patients arrive, and 80% of them were addicted to caffeine, most coffee, but there were some black tea addicts too. And what we did was a gradual reduction. So Wednesday morning at breakfast, they got a cup that was 3/4 coffee and 1/4 substitute. Now, my favorite drink is a bit bitter like coffee. It's called Bonvit Dandelion Root Tea. You can get it any Woolies or Kohl's, right there in the tea section. And I love it so much, I actually bring it back with me when I come to Europe because you can't get this special one here. So you get the 3/4 on Wednesday, and then Thursday is a 50-50. And then Friday is only 25% coffee and 75% the substitute. And on Saturday, you're free of caffeine. And that helps people get over it because one of the common side effects is headaches, because caffeine restricts blood vessels. So when you drink caffeine, the blood vessels going to the brain become constricted and you have less blood flow. And when you don't drink caffeine, suddenly a full blood flow goes into the brain and it causes headaches. The brain has adjusted to the lower blood flow. So when you do it this way, the blood vessels will gradually return to their normal size and you'll get a gradual increase in blood flow. That's the easiest way. Now, if you can do it cold turkey, that's great because you'll just, you know, I mean, I've met several people who've done that. It's so important. They just go through any unpleasantness. It goes over after a day or so. So you can do it either way, but it is important to do that. If you want to be healthy, there's really no way to do that and continue consuming caffeine. If you want to read an interesting book, it's called The Caffeine Blues by Stephen Chernitsky. And The Caffeine Blues describes in great detail everything that happens to you when you drink it. And he points out that it's hard to get good information about this because the researchers on caffeine are themselves caffeine addicts. And if you're going to write about your own addiction, you're going to present it in a much more positive way. You're not going to say, we are hopeless addicts. They're going to say, well, a little bit's still okay, even though it's addictive, and it'll stop your mineral absorption and it'll overburden your liver, but a little is okay. And they always come up with this, but a little is okay. And the point is that a little is not okay. But the less the better, obviously. So that's
Steve,
that's the story on caffeine.
Can I ask you, someone's just asked here about dealing with rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, that's a great question. Rheumatoid arthritis, that is where this program that I stand for really shines. When I worked at the clinic, we had, as I mentioned, mostly cancer patients, but we had psychosomatic, but the other one was called internal medicine. And we had a lot of rheumatoid arthritic patients in this, and the patients only stayed for 6 weeks. So no cancer patient is cured in 6 weeks, obviously. You've got to follow them after they get home again. But in the 6 weeks they were there, our greatest successes were with rheumatoid arthritis. In fact, in my book, the beginning of, like the introduction in chapter 1, I tell some of the stories of the rheumatoid arthritic successes because they were so sensational. And it made such an impression on the administration of the clinic that they considered actually opening a new department of rheumatoid arthritic medicine just because we were having such success with it. And in the end, they didn't do it, but they were certainly considering doing it because it works. And I'll tell you why it works. Because we take away all of the inflammatory factors. Rheumatoid arthritis is an inflammatory self-caused, so autoimmune illness. And the most important thing is don't eat nightshades. Now, some people don't even know what nightshades are, but they are potatoes, tomatoes, capsicum, eggplant, chili, and tobacco. So all nightshades are cousins, and they all contain some form of nicotine. Now, the nicotine in potatoes is called solanine. Solanine is what makes potatoes turn green if you put them out in the sun, or if they get enough sunlight. If they do turn green, they're highly toxic. But even if they don't turn green, there's always solanine there. It's an anti nutrient. It's there to be toxic so that it will discourage animals from eating it. That's why most of the toxin is in the outer layer. So like you should never eat potato skins because they are really high, because that's where the bite comes from, the insect.
Steve, I'm going to keep going with a few other questions. George,
okay.
I've got that book, just so you know.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Now, can you just talk a little bit about kefir?
Yeah, kefir is good if you make it with something other than cow milk. So you could make it with, I'll tell you, my daughter likes it because she can feel it's really good for her, but she does it this way. She makes it a couple of times with coconut, and the kefir culture actually thrives best on cow milk. So after a couple of rounds with coconut, she'll take it through one time with cow milk. She doesn't actually drink it, but she makes it with cow milk to revive the culture again. And then she'll use that revived culture to continue making her coconut kefir. But it's very good. It's I would say probably more medicinal than yogurt, and yogurt is really good.
I know that there's a bit of concern from a few people about, what are they going to do without their dark chocolate and their sweets. I know that was a real issue for my family. Can you just talk a little bit about what are the substitutes? I mean, we don't need them now anymore, but can you just talk a little bit? It went very quickly. Can you talk about the substitutes?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, see, most people are very much grounded in sensorial pleasure. Now, in chapter 2 of the book, where I tell about the Taoist Taoism is a philosophy of polarity. I tell about the Taoist roots of healthy food and how there are different levels of perception of the world. And the second level, you're working up from one, and the second level is called sensorial. So you're making your decisions based on sensorial decisions rather than, say, at level 4 is analytical. So if you're at level 4, you say, well, chocolate's not good for me, so I'm not going to eat that. But not very many people get up to number 4. They're at number 2, which is it tastes so good and I don't want to give it up. Level 3 is emotional. It's like, but it always gives me a feeling, I'm not happy in my relationship. And when I eat chocolate, I feel I'm getting some comfort out of it. See, that's level 3 thinking. But I've found that only the bravest get through to level 4, let alone number 7, which is the highest level. But in any case, we put this in perspective that we just live with our reality. And if you are at level 2, sensorial, then you just work at other sensorial pleasures until that disappears. Because what you find is that which you need this week and think is, your life's quality is dependent on it, next week you don't need it. Now, the patients in the clinic had an easy time because they only needed to come to the dining hall 3 times a day and be served. Imagine, it couldn't be easier than that. And within 3 days, nobody needed any of these old things like chocolate, etc., because they found the alternative. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you are really into chocolate, I find the best immediate substitute is creamed coconut. Now, often this is sold, it's a little 200-gram pack about this size, and it comes from Sri Lanka. They sell it in Asian shops, sometimes in organic food shops, about $2 a block, maybe 3 by now. It's been a while since I bought this, but it's anyway cheap. And so you break off a piece of it, maybe 20, 25 grams is all you need, a little bit of that. Put that in your mouth and just let it slowly dissolve in your mouth. It's very nourishing. It has the combination of sweet and very fatty, because that's what chocolate is. It's not just sweet, it's got all that oil. Well, chocolate contains palm kernel oil, which is very much like coconut oil. So you take that and it's all you need. When I fly, I used to fly before all this happened. When I would fly, I would take this along with me. I put it in the fridge and take it out to the airport. So when the security checked it, it's a solid, hard block. And then once I get on the airplane, I put it under my leg, and then my body heat will warm it up. Then it gets a little softer. Then they wouldn't let it through customs or security now once it's got soft. But I can eat that on the plane because I take just a little bit of that and it gives me a feeling of being satiated for hours. It's just it's like chocolate. It's got a real denseness to it. That works for everyone. For sweets, otherwise, you can have more fruit. When you get a need for sweet, eat some fruit. But a lot of sweet desire is not just for the sweet, it's for that oily quality too. So you eat fruit together with nuts. So have some cashews, macadamias, walnuts, whatever. And you have that together with fruit, and you'll find that takes care of the sweet desire. See, needing sweet is just a sign of low blood sugar. So when you start eating the right foods, your blood sugar balances, and that takes care of it. Like, I never have a need for sweets, so obviously my blood sugar is balanced. But blood sugar imbalance is a very common condition today.
Steve, can you talk a little bit about animal protein, including eggs?
Animal protein, yes. Animal protein is a nice complement to plant protein. Now, plant protein, which are the beans I mentioned before, or as tempeh, should be a major protein. Michael Pollan, has written a couple of interesting books. One is called The Omnivore's Dilemma, and the second book is called In Defense of Food. And he points out that how we should eat. He's really well informed, and it's good advice. And I quoted him in my book, and what he said was, eat real food, mostly plants, and not too much. And that's basically what we should do. So you eat mostly plant food, but not totally, unless you are a convinced vegan. Now, I'm not a vegan. but I certainly respect vegan if people want to do that. You just have to know what you're doing. Animal protein will give you some of the nutrients that you would miss in vegan food if you don't know what you're doing. So, for example, if you eat fish, you get the omega-3 fatty acid. If you eat well, animal food in general will give you saturated fat, which is important. We've heard a lot of bad things about saturated fat, but it's actually important to have that. And coconut oil does have that, so you don't have to have animal food. But when you do eat it, it also gives that. But above all, it's a protein, because just practically speaking, looking at how people do with this, if we eat 3 meals a day, we should have protein at every meal. That means 3 proteins. And no one really wants to eat 3 kinds of beans in a day. You just want to have some, you know, maybe have an egg one meal and something else. So if you have fish or chicken, you know, as long as it's good quality, not hormone, antibiotic kind of stuff, I think that definitely fills a purpose. Now, there are some conditions where I recommend people to eat vegan maybe for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Like I do personal sessions with people, and in that I will go into detail. And I do that also through internet. I found that internet counseling now, where we don't have the actual meetings so much anymore, works very well. That each person can decide himself how much animal protein he wants to eat. And it can be more or less, but it shouldn't be a lot, because that creates acidity. So if we come back to acidosis that I talked about before, if I see someone's in an advanced state of acidosis, I would recommend that this person eat vegan food for a couple of weeks, because the quickest way to get rid of acid is not eat animal food. It contains sulfuric acid, phosphoric acid, nitric acid. Those are very strong acids. Compare that with citric acid in lemons, which is nothing by comparison. So you get rid of the acids and just experiment with food. See, how do you feel when you eat only plant food? It's very, very light. When we travel, we really have to eat animal protein, you know, because you go to a restaurant, it's all set up by animal protein. You want to have the fish or the poultry or whatever. And so if I come back from a trip where I've had to eat in restaurants, you know, it can happen to any of us. We end up in a restaurant, you know. And so then I will find that eating 3 or 4 days of plant-based protein feels really good, because I've had too much animal protein. My body can feel that, because it's an intuitive thing. So if you do eat animal protein, think about the need for eating plenty of vegetables with that to create the alkalinity, and also eat pickled vegetables. That means sauerkraut, these things. Now, there's a difference between vinegar sauerkraut that you would get off the shelf somewhere and having an organic, unpasteurized sauerkraut that's only found in the cooler section of the organic food shops. That's very good. Now, another thing, something that Jenny mentioned, that they took my recommendation to heart, that is a drink called grain fields, fields of grain. Grain fields drink from Queensland, which is a high enzyme, high beneficial bacteria drink. And you can find it at ADM Foods, you can order yourself. You don't find it at all organic food shops, so the easiest thing, just order it yourself. You can order a carton and have it sent. If you order enough of it, they'll give you free freight costs. And unopened, they're good for a year. So in any case, these are some of the things you can do to balance the animal food, and so that you stay in balance. Everything's a matter of balance.
Steve, that Grainfields product that you're talking about, we purchase it in boxes. We buy 1 box a year, and we diluted 1 part water, 1 part Grainfields. And for anyone who's in this session who's got kids, it actually tastes like a soft drink. It tastes really good.
That's a good point.
My husband drinks it straight.
Yeah.
He drinks a bottle in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Is that too much?
No, whichever way you like to have it. See, it's food, so you can't overdose like taking too much cortisone or something. This is just food. Have as much as you like. Have it either straight or or diluted. Most people dilute it, and I do about the same as Ant. I do a 50-50 split. Some people do only 1 part to 2 parts of water. They find it too sour. But in the Melbourne summer, there is nothing better as a thirst quencher than grain fields with some water. And I sometimes add some extra lime to it in the summer because of that thirst quenching effect.
And Steve, when you spoke about coffee being really bad for us, I had to get off coffee cold turkey because of the gout stuff. But for anyone else, I think a big key that I've learned from you over the years is if you can find a substitute, then it's easier to follow the path and you don't feel like you're depriving yourself. One of the things which I picked up on from your guidance was turmeric latte. So you can get, I'll just see if the camera can pick it up. You can get turmeric latte like this from Coles. And I've checked out all the ingredients and it doesn't have nasties in it. And then you also spoke about coconut milk. I tried all the different ones. And this one also you can get at Coles or Woolworths. I find it so tasty. And I actually find that sort of fatty flavor that you speak about is very satiating.
Well, thanks for those tips, Ant. That's great. Having a good substitute is invaluable. And also, interesting, turmeric is a very self-healing substance. You know, it's used in cancer therapy. So you're getting 2 advantages there, just like with the dandelion root. It's not only a substitute, but it's actually a
anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, it's anti-inflammatory. That's right.
And Steve, I also learned from Karen Tan, who's on the call. Karen runs a business called The Wellness Keeper. Karen, through her program, introduced me and others to the whole process of oil pulling, where she suggested we take a nice healthy spoon of coconut oil and put it under our tongue and leave it there for anywhere between 3 and 20 minutes in the morning. And I found that's made a massive difference because for me, I always had a very dark orbit under my eye here. And that one thing has changed the complexion of my face.
Yeah, well, if you swish it around, it will get good contact to all of the gums and the mucous membranes on the inside of your cheeks. Swish it around. 15 to 20 minutes is considered to be ideal, but even a few minutes, if you don't have more time, is good. I mean, I do that in the morning when I get up. And then as I'm walking around doing this and that, even if I go down and do a few yoga stretches, I'll still have this stuff in my mouth, swishing it around. And then I sometimes even forget I've got it there and I'll look and I see I've gone a half an hour because I'm doing all these other things while I'm swishing this stuff. I like to follow it up with a little bit of salt water afterwards. It really cleans the mouth nicely afterwards. So just a quick salt water rinse. And I notice a difference. You know, we have the most bacteria in our mouths when we wake up in the morning. So that's a great way to start the day.
So I am aware that some people need to get off as people have just been leaving. If you want to get in touch with Steve, Steve, can you just put your email address in the chat? I'm happy to do that if need. I'll do it now.
Okay,
and if anyone wants, a couple of people have already messaged me that they want your details, so I'll connect you with those people anyway. But if people want to stay on and ask a few more questions, we're happy with that too. Can you just talk a little bit about grains? Because I know you're very particular about what grains people should be having and how they need to be prepared. Because to me, what I found about this is the devil's actually in the detail.
Yeah, that's right. Now, before I answer that question, what I'd like to do is make one more try here at the screen share, because I'd like to, let's see here. I've got it here. Oh, I see that's not around here now. What I was going to do was just the last couple of slides I was interested in showing because I wanted to just say one last thing that's very important. First of all, that if you want to have the best prevention of COVID, what you do is take vitamin D, especially now coming out of the Melbourne winter, everyone is going to be in a low D situation. If you get plenty of sun in the summer, you won't need it then, but it has to be in the middle of the day. So it can be anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 units. Now, coming out of the Melbourne winter, I think everybody would do well taking 5,000 units right now. But as the summer comes on, you probably need it the most too, unless you spend your whole day in an office and are not outside during those hours, those couple of hours close to the zenith.
That's number one. Number two is that's prevention. If you know anyone who does get COVID symptoms, the best way to stop this in its tracks is number one, to take hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine. Now that's the one that Trump has talked about. It's available. However, if you want to make it easy on yourself, you just go to an organic food shop and get a flavonoid, which is called quercetin, Quercetin, quercetin. Quercetin is a flavonoid found in berries and pomegranate in different fruits, but it's very good, and in connection with zinc will actually stop COVID in its tracks. So if zinc is in the cell, a virus cannot replicate. So no replication. But the problem is zinc doesn't get into cells very easily. Calcium get into cells, potassium can get into cells, but zinc doesn't get into cells. So you need something to open the cell to take the zinc. And this is where hydroxychloroquine comes in, or if you want to do it in a very simple, easy way, use the flavonoid quercetin, because quercetin, as well as hydroxychloroquine, open the cell so that the zinc can get in. Now there's Dr. Zelenko in New York. That's spelled Z-E-L-E-N-K-O. Dr. Zelenko, Vladimir Zelenko. He has treated hundreds of advanced, serious COVID patients, those who are struggling, like, you got to put them on the respirator. And not one of his patients has died using this combination. And you have to ask yourself, if he's using it, and I know about it, I'm not even a medical person, why don't the public health authorities do something about this? Because all of these deaths and all of this lockdown, that would be totally unnecessary if you know how to deal with it. I mean, if the Australian government would give everybody vitamin D, quercetin, and zinc supplements, think of all the money they'd save from all these, instead of all these shut down businesses and everything, because the illness loses its scary effect when you know how to deal with it. So these are things that are very valuable to know, and it works. Dr. Zelenko is a good example of it. He's not the only one who's doing this. He's just the one who's probably had the most intensive experience with it. Other things you want to do is take vitamin C. And if you, like when I flew from Melbourne to Sweden, I went up to 10,000 milligrams a day. Now that's not what people normally need. I wouldn't think of taking that much. There are people who are really into vitamin C do that. I took, I was probably taking about 2,000 a day. Now I prefer to take vitamin C as a natural C. So go to the organic food shop and get camu, that's C-A-M-U. Camu or acerola. Those are two very good vitamin C sources that are natural. All the flavonoids are in it. But if you're going to go up to 10,000, as I needed to do for my flight as protection, you can't do that with natural. You just don't get enough. So I went to the organic food shop and I got from Melrose a little white bag. It's got an orange dot and it's called vitamin C plus flavonoids. So this is the best product you'll find when you get away from totally natural things like dried berries. And so I used that to go up to my 10,000 units, started taking that like 2-3 days before I flew. And I took it for another week or two after I got over here, just in case, because vitamin C in those amounts will stop any kind of oxidative stress being caused by a virus. In other words, you won't get symptoms. So that's also important. Another good thing is beta-glucan, G-L-U-C-A-N. Now, beta-glucan is a natural ingredient in oats. So if you get oats, have oat porridge for breakfast, you get beta-glucan. Beta-glucan charges up the immune system to deal with virus. You can actually buy beta-glucan as a supplement if you like. It's in baker's yeast. But the beta-glucan is also in the medicinal mushrooms. So if you know anything about the adaptogen Asian mushrooms like shiitake and maitake and reishi, chaga. These are also good sources of it. But if you don't have that, I mean, having oats every day is a good thing to do. So there are a lot of things we can do to create this balance.
So Steve, when you said oats, were you referring to rolled oats or groat oats?
Good point. Rolled oats are okay, but when you roll the oat, it oxidizes. So the amount of nutrients and antioxidants will not be the same as in the unadulterated grain. So if you get something called oat groats, then you've got the whole oat the way you would take it in from the field and not after it's been through the factory. So that's number one. It takes a bit longer to cook that than it does the rolled oats. So, you know, whatever you got time for. I tend to eat oat groats, but sometimes I may be in a hurry and I haven't soaked them, because getting into Jenny's question here about how do you deal with the grains, this is a good transition point. You need to soak them first. And with oats, it's especially important. First of all, oats need to be heated to taste good. So when you buy oat flakes, like rolled oats, these have been preheated in the process. But if you get oat groats, they're just right the way you got them. So the first thing to do would be to dry roast them in a pan. You know, they look just like any other, like rice or any other grain. Dry roast them in a pan until the smell changes. It takes a couple of minutes. You can smell that raw oat smell is gone. It tastes or smells a bit roasted. Then you soak that for 24 hours. Now you want to add a tablespoon of vinegar, because there is phytic acid in oats. Phytic acid is a mineral binder, and it's best to get rid of that because it will bind some of the minerals you're eating. So you soak for 24 hours with a tablespoon of vinegar, and the vinegar will break down the phytic acid. Then you throw away that water after the soaking, rinse it, and then with fresh water, now you boil the oats. And because they've been roasted, it actually goes quite fast. If I just have rolled oats, the rolled oats I buy here are a very solid, good organic oats. So there's not so much that leaks out into the water. Some of the rolled oats are so smashed that it seems that half of the content goes out into the soaking water. So you may decide just to take the phytic acid disadvantage with rolled oats, because you're going to lose some of the rolled oat in the soaking. In any case, this is a good guideline for any grains like brown rice, which I eat a lot of. Brown rice and oats are my favorite. I sometimes eat quinoa, especially it's a good summer grain, very light. I soak that too. And you see a lot of foam come out of it. There's all these saponines. There's saponine coming out, and you know, you can basically wash your hands with it. It's got a soapiness. That's okay too, but soaking is important because there are a lot of anti-nutrients in natural food. When we eat refined food like white bread, these have all been removed together with the nutrients. And if you want to get the whole nutrient package, you're also going to get the anti-nutrients. That's why you want to do the soaking or fermenting. Fermenting gets rid of them. I'll give you an example of beetroot. Beetroot is fine, but beetroot contains a lot of oxalic acid. Oxalic acid also binds minerals, creates oxalates, and it's the major cause of kidney stones or oxalates. So if you eat beetroot, even if you cook it, you're still going to get the oxalates. But if you pickle it, you do the fermentation actually breaks down the oxalic acid and also breaks down phytic acid. So fermented foods are a very good way to get all the nutrients in food.
Sorry,
Now,
Steve, can you just go back to beetroot? I'm having a minor breakdown here.
Okay.
Beetroot. So is beetroot not good?
Well, it's not the worst thing you would eat. I mean, see, we don't have to be afraid of oxalic acid, because there's oxalic acid in lots of things. There's even a little bit in carrots, which are pretty harmless. But the real oxalic acid load is in the greens of beetroot. I would not eat those. But the beetroot itself it's a modest source of oxalic acid. So if that's the worst you do in the way of oxalic acid,
I'm pretty wild. My life's really wild.
You'll do well.
Is
The way you get into trouble with oxalic acid is eating spinach, silver beet. Silver beet's got as much oxalic acid as the greens of beetroot. So this is the good thing about my book, is because it's all described in detail. But if that seems like a bit much for the beginning, just go to my website, and then you can read the whole food program there. I've got it, with explanations of pickled vegetables. There's all kinds of good information there. And then you can think about, so if you do want to get the book, you can call my partner in Melbourne, Angie. I'll give you the telephone number here, since I'm not going to go into the screen share thing again. I don't want to risk getting blocked out. It is with a Melbourne 03, it is 9772-8469. I'll repeat that. 9772, that's Bayside suburbs.
Steve,
8469.
I've just put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. And if you'd rather send her an email, I mean, she's usually there because, no one's going anywhere these days. But I'm going to send an email. It's Angie B with 2 E's, Angie B11 @hotmail.com. And she can get the book to you. The book costs $45. It's got a lot of information. Some people call it an encyclopedia. It's just full of information. One of my friends in Melbourne told me, I can see now why it took you so long to write the book, because I spent several years writing it. He said, I'm now starting the 3rd time I'm reading through it, because after 2 times I still have not internalized all this information. And of course, lots of good recipes from Angie, because in the end, it's like Ginny said, the devil's in the details. And when you've got those guidelines, it will show you, what do you do with seaweed? What do you do with grains and, tempeh and all these things? Because this system works. And I have seen so many people recover. I just now, this morning, received another great email from a woman who has cancer in Germany, who I gave some information to a few days ago. And she has experienced such a surge of energy that all of her friends are asking what she's doing. Well, it works if you do it. And of course, when you got cancer, that gets your attention. So there's actually nothing that's more important or has higher priority than your health in that situation. But it's really being able to get these details down and doing it right. And that's why I'm so glad that I have the book to offer, because before I had the book, I would send people off after a consultation session, and I couldn't be really sure if they would be able to handle this, because it is a lot of new information. I'm telling people, milk will give you cancer, and people have been thinking all the time, but I need milk for osteoporosis prevention. So it just turns everything upside down. So yeah, that's good contact information to have, and especially now in the COVID time, because imagine how much is it worth to have no fear of COVID. Imagine how much would people pay. I mean, I've read about people who are here in Sweden. They have off the coast, they have little islands where people have their summer homes. People were going out and going to their summer homes before it was summer, because they were so afraid of being around people. And so just living out there in isolation, if you're retired or financially independent, you can do that. And, I'm just not concerned about it, because I know that it takes 2 things to get sick. It takes the microbe and the internal terrain that welcomes the microbe. That's when you get sick. But if you've got the right terrain, that microbe will have no chance. A virus doesn't even have a full DNA. It's a chaotic kind of thing that should be pretty easy to beat.
Steve, wow, so much information. I think, I know we had our one consultation for 3 hours, and then we had a million questions following that. This is the beginning. This is really, if something like this is of interest to you, number one, I would recommend that you get a hold of Angie. We need to confirm Angie's email address, because we're a bit confused, but that's okay. We'll do that in a second. And the other thing is, if you actually really want to do this and really want this to happen for you, I would highly recommend that you contact Steve and have a consultation, because that's where you get into the specifics of what's going to work for you with your specific situation and whatever your ailments or thoughts might be. So I think that really, to me, is the next step from here. And you do all of that online. It was really, really easy and very, very comprehensive. So I think that's really the next step from here. My husband's just left the room, but he did want to share with everyone that for him, he was exhausted. So he has fibromyalgia, which is a pain condition, and he was not only exhausted but could barely move, and it has really been a life changer. I'm not saying he's the number one specimen of health, but he's definitely on his way. And so really, before Ant was telling me about this on and on and on, and I was like, oh yeah, whatever. But seriously, we got to a point that we were so desperate that we needed to try something. And I just thought, to me, it just sounds so logical that food can really heal. And I thought, surely it's just too simple to be true. It's just so simple. And it does take work, and it is, a little bit of a different way. We soak all of our grains, and we've got this whole production line going all the time. But we've only got one life. As the wonderful John Martin sitting there says, we have one planet A and we have one body. So what better way to spend it than to soak a bit of grain and look after yourself and the people you love around you, and have a great, healthy life. So that's why we've decided to do it, and I can't be more grateful. So, Steve.
Well, that's great, Jenny. And also that reminds me, you pointed out something that Ant once mentioned to me, that in a presentation it should end with a call to action. And you just made that call to action, so I don't have to do it.
Jen, wasn't it fascinating when we were talking about it? Your husband's first question was, okay, what's this guy's qualifications?
Oh my gosh,
and I said,
yes, it was crazy. So I actually organised a meeting with my husband and Ant before we started this. And I said, Ant, I need you to tell him about it because he just won't listen. So, sorry.
He asked, what's Stephen's qualifications? And I said, I actually don't know, but he solved so many problems. I don't care what his qualifications are. I don't need to know how the light works. Stephen shows me how to hit the switch. The light goes on. I'm happy.
That reminds me of a funny thing I experienced in the UK. I love the British sense of humor. And I was at the UK Summer Health Week. And one man told me that he had called his wife and told her that he had taken a consultation with me. And she said, well, what kind of qualifications does he have? And he said, well, I don't know much about him, but he has a lot of tattoos and a big ring in his ear.
So, Steve, can we just confirm, are you happy if anyone in this community wants to reach out and have a consultation session with you? Are you happy for people to approach you directly and you?
Oh, sure. That's right. I've got plenty of time because normally I do a trip down the European continent to Germany and Switzerland, sometimes Austria, because I speak German, so these German-speaking countries. I go there in September, but this year, none of those are happening. So I'm available anytime. Now, this is a prime time to reach me. I'm very flexible. I can adjust to your time. It's 8 hours earlier here, so this is good. It's afternoon or evening for you. It's late morning for me. So yeah, anyone who's interested can contact me, and I'll be happy to give you some guidance.
Wow.
Thanks, Steve. Really, really amazing. And I think, I feel like it's so simple when you know that something's working and actually making the difference. And I think, I just think no time like the present. And, I think one of the things, Steve, you and I discussed at that beginning consultation was the hardest thing is actually going to eat at other people's houses. At the moment, we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything.
That's right.
I kind of looked at my husband and I said, we're stuck at home anyway. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Let's just do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Convincing. Can you just confirm Angie's email address? Because I've said something wrong. ANGIE.
Yeah. and then B-E-E, like the
Yeah.
bees and
11.
11 at hotmail.com.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, so I'm here in Stockholm, Sweden, and I hope that it's not too long before I can come back to Melbourne. I left my heart in Melbourne and not San Francisco, and I usually spend roughly half the year there. And now my usual time to come down is probably not going to be realistic this time, but hopefully next year, not too late, I'll be coming back, and maybe I'll have a chance to meet some of you personally, or if not, maybe we'll get together online again. This is an amazing technical possibility to be able to do this. You know, you're halfway around the world, and I feel like I'm just sitting, you know, in a room somewhere, just chatting with everyone. So it's great.
Thanks, Steve.
Wow.
We're absolutely thrilled to have you here, and so glad that everyone could hear it and get value from it. So really, really appreciative. I know that there are lots of comments here of how much people have appreciated it, and you know, we will speak to you soon and have you back anytime.
Okay, well, greetings to Melbourne, and thanks again for this wonderful chance. In Buddhism, there's an expression that's called Dharma. Dharma is the reason why you came to the earth for this incarnation, and what I did today, that's my Dharma. That's why I'm here.
Wow.
Thank you.
Steve,
Thank you.